Hi everybody, welcome to All Games New and Old. I am David Rodriguez, and today we're going to be reviewing Ark Nova. This was published in 2022 by Capstone Games and was designed by Matthias Wig. Now, this game is all about building your own zoo, so in order to talk about it, I've contacted a zoology expert, so let me send it over to him.
I'm Bob Fantastic, and I had a chance to play this here game. What you gotta do is, you gotta build your zoo, you gotta fill your enclosures, and you gotta make sure your appeal matches your conservation efforts.
That sounds great, so did you like the game?
Nah, man, this right here is bullpucky. People don't care about your conservation efforts, they want all appeal. That's why, at my particular zoo, we never release any animals into the wild, because the park is wild. You could be sitting there, eating a piece of pizza, and a caribou will come try to take a bite of it. Then, while a caribou is busy, a lion might come, tackle the caribou, and while they're rolling around, they roll into a porcupine. And that's where it gets really interesting, because pretty soon you see a boa constrictor coming up the aisle.
That sounds pretty unethical. What if a person gets attacked by an animal?
That's what waivers are for, my friend.
Oh god, let's go to our gameplay overview. Alright, that was horrible. So, let's talk about Ark Nova. So, there's a lot of moving pieces here. We're certainly not going to touch on every single rule. There's a lot of them. But to give you an idea, when you set up, you're going to put your extremely long game board across your table, and you can flip it to have it either be going across horizontally or vertically, depending on what you prefer. And that's going to have 6 spaces for cards that you're going to put out. You're going to shuffle up your gigantic 200 plus card deck that has mostly animal cards, but also some sponsor cards and conservation cards. We'll talk about those soon. And you're going to lay 6 of them out at first face down, so you don't know what's out there until you've already picked all your stuff. You're going to get the rest of your boards out. There's an association board. You're going to have your own personal player maps. There's 8 different sheets. 4 of them on one side will have like the very beginner map, which are all the same, and they start you with an enclosure, and that's what they recommend for the first time you play. The other 4 on one side will have like still beginner maps, but a little more advanced, a little bit fewer rewards that come from placing things, and that's meant to ease you more into the game. And then the other side of all of them has, each map is unique, and each one has a little special power that the player will have, and so if you're playing with those sides, you're going to be dealt 2 randomly, and you're going to look at those and decide which one you want. So once you've done that, you're going to be dealt 8 of the cards from that gigantic deck I mentioned earlier, and you're going to pick 4 of them to keep and the other 4 to discard. Those discarded cards usually don't come back into play. They could, but not super likely to do so. You are also going to lay out your action cards. In the first space, you're always going to have your animal card, and the other 4 spaces you're going to randomize. That does matter. We'll kind of talk about why in a little bit. And then you're going to be given a couple end goal scoring cards.
And with the end goal scoring cards, you have two of them to look at, and they're just for you to look at. And as the game progresses, there will be markers depending on how many players you're playing with, where you have to decide which card you're going to keep and which one you're going to discard. So once you get to that marker point, you have to decide which end goal scoring card you want to try to actually aim for. So it's kind of nice because it gives you a chance to start building up your zoo and then you can kind of figure out which direction your zoo has kind of gone for between the 2 cards, which one you might be able to be better at accomplishing. Going into the action cards, I'll start with the animal one, since that does go into the first spot. Each of the action cards actually has 2 sides. And you'll start with the single side, and then as you're playing the game, you can upgrade your action cards by flipping it over. And the other side will have a little better actions. So, for example, the animal card, depending on what position your card is at, it determines the power level of that card. And for the animals, when you're in that first spot, you can't play any animals into your zoo. And then the second, third, and fourth spot, you can place 1 animal. If you get all the way to the 5th spot, then you can place 2 animals. But you have to be able to pay the cost of those animals, whether you're playing one animal or two. And on the other side, you can play one animal on the first spot, and you can play 2 animals earlier on, I think is the third spot.
All right, so we talked a little bit about the cards mattering what space they're in. So the spaces are labeled 1 through 5, and again, that marks like the power of each card. So if you pick a card, you're going to kind of pull it down away from the rest so that you know which spot it was in. You're going to do the action, then you're going to slide all the rest up, and you take the one you just played and put it in spot 1. So you can't really play the same action back to back and have it be like really powerful. It becomes really weak after the time you use it. There are little X-shaped tokens that you can use to boost it onto like another power level if you want to, which is kind of nice because sometimes you really need to get a certain thing done. But going forward, one of the cards is the build card. That one's pretty simple. It lets you build an enclosure. And depending on the power level you're at, you can build a different size enclosure. So the enclosures are numbered or 1 through 5 spaces. And that matters because certain animals can only fit in a certain size enclosure. So a large animal cannot fit in a 1-space enclosure. Obviously, it'd be too cramped. So it'll let you do that. It'll also let you build specialty buildings. When you're on the first side of it, it lets you build the petting zoo. And then on the other side, it lets you build the aviary and the aquarium, I believe. And those do come some kind of special things with helping you get more animals into your zoo and may have some other bonuses as well. So another card that you could have as an action is the association action. And when you do that, it's going to allow you to do something on the special separate association board. Each space on the association board has a certain power level. So depending on what power level your association card was in when you played it, you'll be able to do one of those actions. So if you play, or if it's at power level 2, you can just get a couple of reputation points, which is kind of a good thing. It lets you access some more stuff a little bit later in the game. If it's on space 3, you could take one of the partner zoo tokens. Each one is associated with a different region of the world, and those are important because they count as a symbol for those regions, and sometimes you need a certain number of a given symbol to play a certain animal or to complete a certain conservation project. If you have 4, you could take one of the university tokens, and these also have an effect in the game. They can raise your hand size count from 3 to 5 because you need to discard a certain point of the game that we'll get to later. Other ones that give you certain symbols that, again, you'll need for various kinds of projects you might want to play out into the game. If you get it to the 5 level, that is what will let you play or complete a conservation goal, which will be out on the board as long as you have the other requirements. You can put your worker there, and then that'll let you get some extra conservation points, which is pretty fantastic. Once you flip that card over, you have the opportunity to then, when you do an association action, donate to conservation efforts, and that can give you some conservation points as well.
One of the other cards is called the cards card, and what that lets you draw cards from the deck, and depending on what power level that card is on, you may be able to just draw cards straight into your hands. You may have to draw cards and discard a card. If you're in the last spot, you can either draw cards or you can do what's called snatch, and that's taking a card off the actual board itself. There's some benefits to doing that because then you can actually pick which card you're getting rather than a random card. But then you only get one card instead of multiple cards. When you play that card, it will have at the top something that says break 2. When you're playing multiplayers, there's a break track that you follow. When it has a break and a number, you'll move the token down spaces, and when it gets to the end of the thing, that marks the end of the round. There might be some other things in the game, but for the most part, it's just based off of the cards card. And the other card, which is going to be the last action card, is the sponsorship card. And the sponsorship card doesn't always break. Basically, you can play a sponsorship card based off of the level that the sponsorship card is on, and the sponsorships will kind of help you do different things. It might help build a school program in your zoo. It might help build a special animal exhibit in your zoo that you don't actually put animals in. It just helps kind of represent that animal and takes up some space in your zoo, which you can get bonuses for connecting rocks to rocks, connecting all the water, filling up your whole, building out your entire zoo. So sometimes those spaces help, those kind of cards can help because it helps you build out your zoo faster and without costing money. And then it can also give you, there's also different cards that will like give you money if a certain type of animal is played, and all sorts of different bonuses. And sometimes it's just an immediate action, and then other times there can be an immediate action and also an end of game bonus that will give you extra conservation points at the end of the game. But if you don't have a association card that you want to play, you can also do a break times the power level that you're at. So if you're in the 5th spot, it's going to do a break 5 and move that counter down really fast. But then you also get money for that same level. So if you did a break 5, you would also get 5 coins as well. And that's all the cards for the break track. Like I said, it will start at a certain spot depending on how many players you get. Once it gets to the end, that ends the round, and there's some actions that you'll do at the end of the round to finish off the round. One of them is the cards that are out on the board. You will remove the last two cards from the game, put them in the discard pile, slide the rest of the cards down, and put out 2 new cards. There's some action tokens that some animals will play, like a venom token or a constriction token. And then there's also a multiplier token. If those have been played during that round, those tokens are then removed. You'll collect your associates back from the association board, and you will collect money. And the amount of money that you will get is based off of where you're at on the scoring board. When you place out animals and some attractions and so that, you get tickets, and you'll move your token around the ticket track. And then at different intervals of the tickets, it represents how much money you get at the end of the round. If you have a kiosk, you can get some money based off of what you have around your kiosk. And there's a couple, and then some of the cards that you played out, like the association cards, can sometimes give you money as well. And then after everybody has done all that, you will move the break token back to the starting spot, and you will start your next round. And the appeal track is represented by tickets. So when I was saying that you get tickets for like placing the animals, that's what I was talking about. So just to make it a little bit clearer.
Yeah, it's not a separate thing, but they do look like little, I don't even know they're intending to be, but they look like little ticket stubs.
Yeah, they look like the mission tickets. So.
Yeah. So, and there is actually one more action that you can do that isn't exactly represented by the cards. If you're looking at your cards and there's nothing that you can do or want to do, you can still pull one down and not do the action on it and just get an X token, basically, for free that you'll use later. And then you still treat it like you played that card. So you move it to the one spot and shuffle all the rest forward.
Another thing with the board and the association and the associates, you only start with the one associate, but as you're moving tokens onto your board, there will be certain spots that you cover up, or as you're moving your ticket and conservation counter markers around on the board, it will help you unlock more associates, and it'll also help you unlock being able to flip those cards over to their more powerful side.
Okay, so for the final scoring, it's a little different than a lot of games. So this has basically 2 tracks. It has your appeal track, which starts at kind of the bottom of the board, and the conservation track, which starts at the top. So appeal, there's a lot more spaces because you're going to get that a lot more easily. Almost every animal you play will give you some appeal, but the conservation track is mostly moved along by completing conservation goals. So that could be like having a certain number of animals in your zoo or releasing certain animals. There's a bunch of them, basically. And so those will come more slowly, but there's fewer spaces for those. And as you play the game, those tracks are both going to be moving. And when someone's 2 pieces meet, that triggers the end game. Everyone else gets one more turn to hopefully score some points, and then that's it. And then the scores are based on how far apart those two markers are. So if they have actually passed each other, you're going to have a positive score. And if you have it, you're going to have a negative score. This tends not to be necessarily a really high scoring game unless you're playing against her. But, you know, like, it's not unusual at all for the people who have not won to have just a negative score. Just because, you know, if you haven't crossed your two pieces, that's what's going to happen. So, but there are a lot of things that can help you out at the end. Some cards will have certain things that'll give you one kind of point or the other. And that can help you kind of boost things up at the last minute. So, but that's basically an overview of how the game is played. Again, there's a ton of little things that we just can't get into all of them here, but hopefully that gives you a sense of how the game works.
The artwork in this game, I think, is really pretty. It almost looks like real photographs, but then they put like an art filter on it. I don't know if that's what they did, but that's the type of artwork that it looked like to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, so here's what's weird, and this might just be me and my eyesight. They definitely did that with everything that is not an animal, like all like the you know, scientists and whatever cards, for sure. Some of the animals I think they did too, but some of the animals don't like it to me. Am I crazy, or is it just like that? It's because it's not like it's almost, it's kind of a subtle effect.
Yeah,
and so I don't know if I'm just like bonkers, but some of them don't look like they've had the filter, and then a few of them really do, and I don't know if I'm nuts.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, some of them, it looks like it's almost like some of them they put the filter on higher, and some of them they didn't.
Yeah, maybe
like,
that's,
maybe
I don't
they
know.
changed the filter on it.
Yeah, it could be. But I think it's really cool. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's basically like photos. It's not like a painted thing. And in some games, like, I really wouldn't like that, but I think it's kind of cool that they did it here. I like seeing the pictures of the animals as they actually are. You know, there's no artist interpretation here other than perhaps that filter, if that's actually on those animals.
And some of like the conservation cards do have artwork on it, but
yeah. But I think it's really neat. I like seeing it, and they really made sure they've got like the most vivid, colorful pictures for these things that they possibly could. So it's really beautiful. Some of the animals are real cute. I had to like not gear my strategy towards like, I want that cute animal. Everyone likes that cute animal, right? Doesn't work necessarily out that great, but
depending on the cards you got, I was able to get a lot of my cats.
I wonder if there's like actually like a cute strategy or like a mean strategy or like a, I don't know. I feel like there might be something, but yeah, I really enjoy just even looking at these cards. When I did the unboxing, I usually don't sit there and look at every card for an unboxing because, especially when there's like 8 trillion of them, but I can help it. I was like, oh look, oh it's a fennec fox. Oh look at that boa constrictor. Oh, like I just can help it. Like it was cool to see these pictures.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, and the boards look nice. I don't think we talked about in the gameplay, but the boards have like different features. Like there's rock and water features that you usually can't build on, but you get things sometimes that'll let you. But I think those look really nice for all that everything has to be in hexes. Yeah. I mean, just to make the game work. But
yeah, and the contrast in colors I think is good because it's I didn't have any issues with like trying to figure out what colors were what. I think the closest thing to that is the association zoos. There's one tile that's like a light blue and one tile that's like a really light green. And those are kind of close together in color, so I could maybe see someone that's colorblind having a little bit of issue telling the difference between those two. But there's symbols on them, so you can still look at the symbols.
Yeah. The tiles are all pretty neat. Like they look like little they look like little enclosures. I mean, every 3-piece looks like every other 3-piece, but that's fine. The things I think is kind of weird is there are these unique buildings that you usually get by playing out a certain card, and it'll just mostly be like a color, and then one of the hexes will be like a silhouette of that animal. And I think that's kind of strange because it doesn't really look like everything else on your board. Like it doesn't look bad. It's fine, and it's nice to see, oh yeah, that's that thing. Yeah. But it is kind of weird that they didn't like put more artwork into those.
I think it works though because you don't put animals into that, and so like when you're and another thing that we didn't talk about with the gameplay is when you build a structure, you put it face down. And then
yeah.
when you put an animal into it, you flip it over.
Right.
Where the specialty exhibits, they don't have that, so you don't have to worry about flipping them over, which is good because they're like kind of weird. A lot of them are weird shapes, and so if you had to worry about flipping them over, it could change up the layout that you did on your map.
That's true. And they do a similar thing artistically with there's a couple like special like one spot buildings. There's like a kiosk and pavilions, which the pavilions just give you like an instant appeal point, and the kiosks can give you income depending on how many other built structures that they're adjacent to. And those are just like a silhouetted version of the building too. For some reason that doesn't bother me because it's just like the one space, but like the other ones are like, it'd be cool if they made this look like bushes or I don't know, whatever. But you know, it's fine. That is the most nitpicky nitpick I can do about the art. Overall, I think it's fine. I like their little special tokens, like the Venom tokens and whatnot, because they really stand out. Like they're just like bright yellow and black silhouette with like a angry looking snake and like, you know, red border. Anyway, they look cool, and it helps that I think that those stand out because when if you have to return them later, you know, you don't want to be forgetting that they're there. Yeah. It helps kind of see them. So anyway, that's kind of my take on that.
So you started kind of going into the components, so we can go into that.
Oh, fine. We'll talk about components. Be that way. So, gosh, I really think they did great on all the components. All the tokens are really good. Wooden blocks are wooden blocks, but whatever. The break token, it took me forever to figure out what the heck it was, even though the break symbol is a little cup of coffee, and it actually is shaped like a cup of coffee. I'm like, what is this? Some kind of weird rock? Like,
you had it upside down for a long time.
I had it upside down, and I was
like,
what does this stone have to do with the break? That's just me. I don't know. It didn't click that that's what that was at all to me, but luckily she's smart. So I was able to figure that out, I guess, with her help. So, but yeah, I don't. It's the cards are nice. The boards are all nice. Tokens are good. I don't know. Is there anything that?
Yeah, I think the one, if I improved anything, the one thing that would be kind of nice is to have some resource boards to help keep some of those trackers in the right spot, and like maybe help with the map. So, because like occasionally, like as you're playing since they're all hexagons, sometimes they can get bumped, and then it kind of, you have to figure out where you had things. But that would really be my only improvement to the components.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could complain that the player maps are basically just like a sheet of, you know, really nice thick paper instead of a board, but I mean, it just sits there. Yeah. It's not like a big deal.
Yeah, doing those things would increase the cost of the game.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, it's not the cheapest game on earth as is. So, you know, again, we're talking minor nitpick. I'd be like, oh, that'd be cool if it was like that. But I'm not actually bothered by how it is. So, you know.
I think they did a really fantastic job of incorporating the theme. It feels like you're building a zoo, and I think that the way they incorporated conservation into the game is really smart too. I think this is a game that it's a lot of fun to play and subtly teaches you about these things as well, because there's so like a lot of the association cards kind of subtly have to do with conservation and how to improve environmental aspects of stuff going on too.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, and you know, it would have been easy, and I don't think anyone would have blinked if they just made it the game about building the coolest possible looking zoo. Like that would have probably been fine. But incorporating the conservation efforts into it is really cool. Like, you cannot win this game purely on appeal, like going for just appeal. Like you couldn't. It's too far. Too far to go. You have to do conservation things as well, which is really how you make it actually like good, like a real zoo. You know, it's not about just bringing people in. It's about helping the animals as well. And so I'm really glad that they incorporated that. You know, they could have not. I think it's really just kind of neat to build out these enclosures and like have your kiosks. I'm actually like picturing like, oh man, it'd be cool to have a pavilion right here by the water, and then you could look out and see the gorillas or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, this is again a movie in my head thing that I always do. But I think they did great with it. You know, I wasn't sure if this would just be more of a more mechanical sort of abstract affair, but I think the theme is really fantastic, and I like. there's kind of a weird thing with the theme that I still sort of like. Like, the cards you get that have like the venomous icon, right? And that can negatively affect another player.
Yeah.
Which is odd because I'm like, haha, I've secured the rattlesnake. Now, rattlesnake, go to the other zoo and bite them so that they can... No, like that doesn't make sense. Or my monkey, oh, they can snatch things from you because I'm sending my monkey to your zoo to take your buffalo. Like, what? Not really. But the actions that they've, or the effects that they've chosen to give them are... Like, they make sense for that animal. Yeah. It doesn't make sense in the broader picture of what you're doing, really, right. But I still like it. Like, that doesn't bring me out of it. It's just kind of like a funny little thing that is not... that it just changes how the theme is working in that part.
Yeah.
But I still think it's really enjoyable. So, I've got no complaints about that little aspect. But it is kind of a funny thing when I think about it. I'm sending a boa constrictor to get you. Yeah.
Well, and another, like, minor, like, or subtle... theme that they also incorporated into it is like some animals, like their exhibit has to be like, if they're like a sea lion, their exhibit has to be next to a water space, and so like, you know, just like some really minor subtle stuff like that where depending on the animal you're playing, it has to be next to a certain kind of structure, I think is also a really smart subtle integration into the game.
Yeah, I agree. I keep thinking little things. Another thing I just thought of, because I mentioned earlier that when you play animals, those almost always help, like, almost give you appeal points. But if you get an animal that's, like, very endangered, that'll give you a conservation point or two as well, which I think is very neat. And that's also cool because I'm like, oh, wow, these things are really, you know, in bad shape. I didn't know that. That's a neat thing. And it makes sense. You're helping preserve that animal's existence. So that gives you the conservation points. So just, I mean, really cool overall. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so final thoughts. You might know there's a lot of hype about this game. So much hype. It's crazy. It came out. It was really hard to get. It came out. It was still hard to get. A lot of people are loving it. It is already ranked super high on the Board Game Geek top, you know, all the games of all time. I believe Tom Vassell on the Dice Tower made it his #1 game of all time already, and it has not even been out a year. There's a lot of dang hype about this game. And I always worried, like, I like the hype, I buy into the hype, but then that also sets you up for possible disappointment. So I was wondering if this game was going to do it for me or disappoint me. It got compared to a lot of games that I have not played. Like, Terraforming Mars is probably the biggest. Also kind of Underwater Cities, which I own, but I have not played. You know, that didn't help me because, because I didn't know those games. So I couldn't even prepare myself mentally really for what I was getting into here. And the first time we played it, I thought, oh, that was good. And our scores were not incredibly far apart. She just won. Can we just blanket say that she won? Always, Freddie? Okay, so she won. But the second game we played, where she stomped me, I was like, oh, wow. I really think I dig this. I think it's really fun and, like, just building out your zoo feels so good to me. Like, it's just cool to get these things filled out and be like, oh, I'm gonna get this exhibit, and you know, you're trying to do your conservation, like, oh, this is neat, we're gonna release this animal to the wild now, hooray, and like, oh gosh, every bit of it's cool. I love the decision making on when you're gonna play your actions, because sometimes you really want to get an animal out, but like, you could do so much better if you got it up to like the higher power level, or, you know, any of the actions you could say that with. There's so many things, and you're like, you want to do this thing, but you have to do that thing, and you have to consider when that's going to let you do each thing. There's a lot of decisions to be made in this game, and decisions aren't hard to figure out, really, like to understand what they are, but figuring out when you're going to do those actions, that's the tough part. Figuring out how you're going to focus, if you're going to focus, and like, you know, what you're going to do, what conservation efforts you're going to try to get. There's so many cool choices, and I think every time you play, you're likely to make some different choices. Like, you're not going to be doing the same strategy every time. It just won't work. And I think it's kind of fun even after the game to kind of discuss like, oh yeah, I was trying to do this and I was trying to get more primates because of whatever. Like, I just like it. And you could try to build your zoo on a theme that you like, but you kind of also have to think about your end scoring and what you want to do there. So yeah, it's funny because I feel like everyone glows about this game, and I feel like I'm kind of doing the same thing. So let me temper myself down a little bit with the one negative that I can think of for this game. And I mentioned there's a gigantic stack of cards, which some people just don't like because of shuffling or whatever, and it is a pain in the butt to shuffle. That's true, but that's not really my complaint about it. My complaint is, okay, I said like this game is getting compared to a lot of games that I haven't played. I'm going to compare it to a game that I have not heard anyone compare it to, that I have played a lot of, and it's not about the mechanics, so bear with me here. I'm going to compare this to Viticulture. Viticulture is a very popular worker placement game, and it's one of our favorite games, I think. Really good. And the complaint that people have about that one, if anything, is that the cards are so random that you can get either like way ahead because of them or really screwed over because of them. And I think this game has that problem too, and maybe even more so. I mean, it's going to depend on the game. Sometimes it won't be this way, but like, am I going to build that petting zoo? Because I've seen one, I have one petting zoo animal in my hand, and I haven't seen any others. Are any even going to come out in the stack of 200 and something cards? I don't know. So is it worth doing that? Like, or I have this conservation thing that says I need animals from Africa. I haven't seen an animal from Africa yet, and we're halfway through the game. Is that something that's ever going to get touched? I don't know. And that's the problem. And your opponent might get all of them, and you don't get any, and you don't even see them. Like, they don't even hit the board because, like, they've been drawn into your opponent's hand when they were just drawing cards off the deck. There's not a small degree of randomness in this game. For all the decisions you're making, you could just have a problem where you're not getting the things you need. You just aren't going to get them. And so that can be, okay, it can be kind of frustrating. So far, even when that's happened to me, I haven't found it that frustrating because I am enjoying building out my zoo so much. So I feel sort of odd sounding like I'm complaining about this when it, in a way, hasn't really bothered me, but also I'm not a super competitive person. So the fact that this has probably helped me lose or lose by more at least, it's kind of like, well, all right, whatever. But some people might be really aggravated. They're like, I can't get any of my conservation stuff done because I can't get these cards, or, so I think that could be a real issue for some people. And I won't say I haven't heard anyone touch on that, but I feel like it hasn't been touched on as much as I think it should be. I'm surprised more people aren't bothered by that to a higher degree. And it could just be because the game is so fun in general that it's like, well, whatever, it didn't work out for me this time. And most people are just like, that's fine, whatever. It was still a cool experience, which is kind of more how I feel. But I think it's really important to know that if you're the kind of person who does not like when things out of their control cost them a win or hand somebody else a win or whatever, like, that can certainly happen. You might have a good spread of cards and maybe it won't happen on some games, but sometimes that's going to bite you because there are so many cards. And I'm glad there's a lot of cards because I want to see all those different animals and I have all those different conservation efforts. That's great. But yeah, sometimes you aren't going to get what you need. And there's not much you can do about it. You can, increase your things in little ways here and there, but eventually it's just not going to work out for you. So that's kind of a big thing. But again, I really enjoy this game. I think it's really fun. We both played it solo as well. And I think you're even more likely to get bitten by that randomness issue definitely. There. But that is what it is. But it plays really fast. So it's a much quicker game solo than it is multiplayer. You're basically just up against a timer. You don't do the break in the traditional way. It's just like I don't get into too much, but it's just basically a countdown timer. So you have a certain number of turns to get your score to at least 0, and that's considered a win. So I wish 0 was a win when I was in high school because some of my scores. But yeah, it's really good as a solo game as well. But yeah, that randomness issue hits you there. So I've been going back and forth in my head about trying to figure out where I wanted to rate this because of the fun, but also randomness issue. So I'm going to go a little conservatively this time, and I'm going to give it an 8 with a high degree of possibility that this will raise in my esteem. It's possible that in the games we've played, I just felt like we've been hit with this issue more than is really typical. I don't know. But I mean, a lot of cards mixed with very certain things you need. I mean, it seems like it's not unlikely that this could happen a lot. But that being said, I wouldn't hesitate to play this at any point with that issue or without that issue. I think it's a really fun game. I do see what all the hype is all about. I don't think it's the #1 game of all time for me at this point. Who knows? Down the road, like I said, my opinion could change, but so far it's an 8, like verging on a 9. So it's real close for me, but that's where I'm at with it. 8.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with pretty much all the points that you made. I think it's a really fun game. It's definitely it's a high strategy game, and so if you're not really into strategy games, then it's probably not going to be a good game for you. But if I love puzzle games and trying to figure out how the best way to plan things out, and so for the gameplay, I love it. I do agree with the randomness of the cards. It can be frustrating. When you're playing multiplayers, I feel like there's a little bit easier chance to kind of mitigate some of that. Like with the conservation cards, there'll be some conservation cards that you can draw, and so you might not be able to do the conservation cards that are initially played out, but you can play other conservation cards to help get you those conservation points. I don't normally play the solo games, but I was enjoying this game enough that I wanted to try the solo and see how it went. And I enjoyed doing the solo game. I did win mine. But but barely. It was very if I would have made one other decision differently, I would have lost. So
and if I just made 10 more decisions right, I would have won.
But that randomness does really can really bite you hard when you're doing the solo. So because it's not as easy to be able to work around those cards if you can't do the initial cards that are dealt out. So I'm kind of in the same boat of going back and forth on scores, and I think I'm also going to give it an 8 with the possibility of it going into a 9. It's a very high 8 for me as well, but it is because of that kind of randomness where you can just have bad luck with the cards and not be able to really do what you need to do to be able to get your score where it needs to be. So
yep. All right, so that's pretty much it. 2 8s, high 8s for both of us, real high score, and I definitely want to play this more and see what I think of it even more as it go forward. So both solo and multiplayer, I think it's great at both. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can know about the next time we put out a video. Otherwise, look forward to seeing you all around the table again at All Games New and Old.
Bye.
Nothing happened.
I feel like I'm hi.
Hello. We're talking about this game.
Alright.
How about this? You say a word, I say a word. You say a word, I say a word.
The
Art.
Is.
Really.
Pretty.
I. Okay. If you enjoyed that video, you might also like this one.
Or this one.
Either way, if you could click this button to subscribe so you can see more of our stuff when it comes out.
We'll see you around the table.
Bye.
Bye.